Hi guys, I hope you're doing okay out there. Okay, so we are about to go back to school either this week or next week, and you're probably feeling a mixed bag of emotions. Maybe you're super excited, maybe you're a bit nervous, but whatever happens, we know that next year is going to be a tough year for a lot of you, with a lot of new things happening in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the way lessons are planned, and all of these things might leave you at times feeling demotivated to keep going. So this is exactly what we're talking about in this episode with our third edu expert of the series, Mr Beezy. And Mr Beezy is a motivational speaker, and he's come to my workplace, but he mostly goes into schools and then talks about mindset and motivation and other things to keep you guys at the top of your game at school. And what we're talking about now is 5 top tips of how to stay motivated, even when things get really tough, even when you think that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. How do you build that internal resilience to keep going? So I think you're going to find a lot of good stuff there. I'm going to put a timestamp in the bottom of the video if you want to skip to different bits that are most relevant for you. But of course, if you have time, I'd watch the whole thing. If you'd like to see more of Mr Beezy's stuff, please do look in the description below, and I'm linking his YouTube, Instagram and website. And if you want to see more from Edu Experts, please do subscribe to the channel. What I'm trying to do is collate the best people, the experts in the know, to help build towards the future that you want, boost your grades, or help you out in everyday school life in general. We've got at least weekly videos coming out on the Beyond. We've got at least weekly videos coming out on Beyond the Blackboard. All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr Beezy. Great, so thanks so much for coming on the show, Mr Beezy. What I wanted to do was just talk a little bit around the mindset about next year and what's coming up, because obviously there's a huge amount of uncertainty. There's autumn exams coming up. There's, our potential future plans for university, or getting ready for sixth form, or general fears about coronavirus. And people's mindsets and motivation are going to be super important during this time. So could you just kick off with what you think are the 5 most important things people can do to stay motivated this year?
Sure, no problem, and thank you for having me. For me, number one, or just one of the 5 key things that people can do to keep themselves motivated this year is to have a plan. So many people fail, so many people don't succeed simply because they don't have a plan that they're following. So, for example, coming out of lockdown in the education sense of things, during lockdown, I was mentoring so many students, and what I found was a lot of them just were used to a certain routine, going to school, time planned out for them, that was taken away from them, and then the responsibility was put on them to kind of put their own routine in place. And that's one thing that I kind of drummed home to them, that you must have a plan that you are following. You must have a routine that you are following, because if we want to be really, blunt with you guys, success is never a mistake. It happens on purpose. And there's a saying that says, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So it's so important that if you want to be motivated, especially this year, that you have a plan that you are following, but not just a plan that you are following, a plan that is convenient for you, right? So many of us, we fail because we just don't have a plan in place. So because we don't have a plan in place, we don't know where to start. Because we don't have a plan in place, it's easy for us to become demotivated very quickly. But you know what? When you have a plan in place, it gives you a sense of direction. It lets you know where to begin. It lets you know what you need to be doing. So even if, for example, I said to my mentees, even if you don't follow your plan today, you've still got a plan in place so that tomorrow you can pick off from where you left off. And that's the beauty of a plan. It's a structure that kind of keeps order in your life. And, to be successful, you need order. To stay motivated, you need to know what you're doing that you need to be motivated for. And, having a plan will definitely do that for you. So definitely one of the 5 things that I feel and believe students will need this year, you will need a plan.
Great.
You will need a plan to stay motivated.
And for anyone watching this right now and thinking, okay, what I've never planned before, I need to start, I need to start making a plan. What's the first step that people can take to making a motivational plan?
no problem. Get your calendar in your phone,
Yeah.
right? And literally, you might have a list of your subjects that you're doing. So then what I tend to tell my mentees is, all right, cool, have a list of the subjects that you're doing. Take 2 subjects, take 2 hours in the day. Every day, you're going to dedicate an hour to a different subject. So for example, Monday, you might do English in 1 hour, then you might do maths in the second hour. Then Tuesday, you might do history 1 hour, then French in the other hour. Business on Wednesday, science on Wednesday. And you just know what subjects you're taking and dedicate an hour to each subject. Now, there's a reason why I say 2 subjects as well. When I was doing this at a school once, and students were writing out their timetable, I found that they were trying to study 4 different subjects in a day. Now, we have to understand something about the brain. The brain likes things in small chunks. It deals with information in small chunks a lot more effectively. So watch this. If you're trying to study 4 different subjects in a day, and I know in terms of the school setup, that's how things may be set up for you guys. So I am very aware of that. But we're talking about you now having control, you now having power, and you now controlling your sort of study time. And I'm saying just pick 2 subjects to do in a day, because the brain can focus on that hour for English and it knows, all right, cool, I'm just doing English this hour. And then the next hour, it knows, all right, cool, I'm just doing maths this hour. And then for me, the key as well is to be as specific as possible. So, if you're doing English, for example, and all right, cool, I'm covering poetry and dialogue, then that's exactly the theme within English that you're focused on. If it's maths, then all right, cool, today when I'm doing my math studying, I'm focusing on fractions or simultaneous equations. It just allows the brain to focus. Also, when you're studying within that hour, here's how you can break it up. You can do half an hour, take a 10-minute break, come back and do half an hour, or do half an hour, take a 10-minute break, and come back and do the final 20 minutes. Either way, you still do an hour's worth of revision, right? The key thing is when you revise in small chunks like that or study in small chunks like that, it's easier for the brain to retain the information. If you're sitting down for an hour straight, 2 hours straight, what happens is within the first 10 minutes, you lose concentration. So what we want to do is we want to avoid the amount of time the brain has to lose concentration and keep it small and condensed and concise so that the brain can remain focused so that you can actually retain the information that you're studying. So that's definitely one way I kind of advise students to kind of set themselves up.
Absolutely. And this is something I found as well. Like the kind of 25-minute break, 25-minute or however you want to do it. It's not an exact science. I've heard called the Pomodoro system or something. And I was struggling over lockdown with my 9-to-5 job. And I had to, because I was just losing concentration throughout the day and losing energy. And so what I started was systemizing it. And because I kept checking my phone as well. And so I got this app, I think called Trees or something like that, but Flora, it's called Flora. And I literally set myself 25 minutes where I didn't check my phone. I knew in 25 minutes, I get a little alert, but in that time, it was almost like a mental thing. Like I am going to only do this one thing for the next 25 minutes. And then I'm going to be told when I can have my break. And it just made me so much more like quick, like spurts is so much better, I find, than the long, never ending haul. So really great advice. Thanks, Mr. Beezy. Next up, next one.
Yeah, so similar to the first one, I think having a plan is important, but I think another thing that's really important is knowing exactly what you're trying to achieve. Now, what I mean by that again is, I was saying to students recently, you need to know exactly what grade you want to get in each subject. Because if you're just like, oh, I'm just taking it as it comes, then it's going to be harder to motivate yourself. But if you know, for example, oh, I need to get a level 9 in this, I need to get a level 8 in this, or a level 7 in this, then that naturally drives your level of motivation because you've got a specific goal that you're working towards. If you know, for example, after school, I'm looking to go to this college or I'm looking to go to this sixth form, and you know the requirements of what they're looking for, then again, that's going to spare your levels of motivation,
Mm-hmm.
because you again got a clear direction of what you're trying to achieve. I find that a lot of students who are not motivated, it's simply because they don't know what they need to be motivated for, right? So it's so important that you know exactly why you need to be motivated. You know exactly why you need to work hard and what you are working hard for.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm telling you to work hard and you don't know what you need to work hard for, then of course you're going to struggle to motivate yourself to work hard, because it's like, well, I'll just be doing it because you're telling me to do it, or I'll just be doing it so I don't get in trouble. But that's not what we want. We want you to have a true understanding of what you want to achieve, so that you know why you need to kind of stay motivated. Definitely.
Totally. And then I guess the bad, like the boring lessons, or when it gets tough, or when you really don't feel like working, that's definitely, again, something that I found whenever whenever I've known what I'm working towards, that's what gets, it's the why. When things are tough, it's the why that gets you through it. Like those,
Yeah.
yeah, like those long vocabulary lists in French, or those like more like igneous rocks in geography that you don't love, or the maths. You might not be good at maths, but you know it's really important. It's one of the most like principal GCSEs you can get for anything that you do. And if you know what that maths can lead to, then you can motivate yourself. But if you don't enjoy maths and you don't have a why, then it's very difficult. I completely agree. Next one.
I think the next one for me is understand what sort of learner you are, right? And I think this is major. I'll give you an example. Just before lockdown, one of my mentorship groups, working with a student, we did this task where online I got them to do a little multiple choice sort of questions, about 20 questions. And at the end of it, it lets you know what percentage of the learner you are. So, if you're 20% tactile, 40% visual, and 40%, auditory. And what we found was the student was revising, or trying to revise, in his weakest learning style.
Really? Right.
But then obviously his approach to revision was, he wasn't motivated towards revision because he found it difficult. And I said, well, by doing this test now, we know that you find revision difficult because you're actually using your weakest revision style to try and revise. So if you try this approach, which comes to you naturally, this approach, which works better for you, you'll find that you'll have better understanding of your work, and it'll be easier for you to remember information. Because watch this, right? We are motivated when we understand what we're doing, right? We lose motivation when we don't understand what we're doing, right? That's why you'll find in school, students enjoy the lessons that they understand. They enjoy the lessons that they perform well in. And then they don't look forward to the lessons that they don't enjoy. Why? Because they don't understand the work, or they find it harder to understand the work. Now, learning your learning style it will make it easier for you to understand the work that you're faced with.
Mm-hmm.
So even if necessarily you're in lesson, you don't get it straight away, you can now go home and adapt your learning style to it to make it easier for you to understand the information that you've been taught. And I'm telling you, naturally, when there is understanding, there is motivation. Because when you understand something, it just naturally encourages you to keep going. There's no sort of roadblock you're going to hit because like, oh, I don't understand what I'm doing, or what's the point of this, I'm going to give up. But there'll be no need for you to give up, because you actually understand the work and you're getting well. And then on top of that, the understanding will reflect in your grades. So when that reflects in the grades, that's going to give them momentum and keep them motivated as well. So you want to really put yourself in a position where you really take time out, and it might even be a month, where you experiment through different learning styles and see what approaches work best for you. But I'm telling you, sacrificing that month to identify that will save you a lot of time over the course of the year. And actually, revision won't seem like so much of a chore, because you'll actually have an approach that helps you to understand your revision and makes it easier for you to remember the information. So definitely learning what sort of learning style works best for you is going to keep you motivated this year.
So just in terms of, I completely agree. And actually it's something that we haven't talked about on this channel before, is learning styles. Can you give any examples of learning styles and what kind of, techniques might work for someone who is, let's say, audio learner? What can they do if they're an audio learner? How can they find that out?
No problem. So I'll give you two examples. So let's say a popular one I find, especially amongst young boys, is the tactile learning style, which is basically a more hands-on sort of learning style. And one thing that would work for someone who's a tactile learner is, for example, quizzes. So, having someone quiz you on the information rather than you trying to sit there and read it out of a textbook. Having someone ask you, okay, what does this mean? Who was the last prime minister? What's the capital of this? And then you're reading off the answers. It's actually quite fun for you, but at the same time, you're learning, because if you get something wrong, it's like, well, no, this is the right answer. It's like, okay, it registers in your brain. So that's a very hands-on approach. You can do that with a family member. You can do that with friends. You can do that online if there's no one to do it with you. So there's many ways you can make that sort of interesting, which is the kind of learning style that works best for them. So more of a hands-on approach. An auditory learner, which is someone who learns best through listening, you can literally record the information that you need to learn and play it back to yourself over and over and over again. Or similar, if they have an audio version of your information online, download it, listen to it on your way to school, listen to it on your way home from school, it playing in the background in your room. And it's similar to when you remember lyrics of songs that you don't even like. It's because of the repetition. You hear it over and over and over again. It might have a catchy beat to it, or etc., etc. Key is to really repeat, listen to the information over and over and over again, and it will just literally sink into the subconscious, and they'll find that when it comes down to it and they need to kind of recall it, they'll be able to recall it quite easily because the information has been heard so many times. So those are just two quick examples.
Great, yeah. And I guess as you said, it might take some time, it might take some trial and error to find out what techniques work for you. But I completely agree. Just really, even if even if your grades don't immediately shoot up, and maybe you feel like you're spending more time discovering what it is your learning style is, I think it's such an important journey to go on, because in the long term, you're going to save yourself so much time, so much effort. I mean, in my case, I'm a highly visual learner. And like, if someone explains something to me, like my friends take the mick out of me when they're explaining like a board game to me. Like I've been playing Monopoly, the card game of Monopoly Go, I think. And they explain it to me, and like they can see my eyes glazing over because I have no idea I just can't absorb information like that. I need to either start playing it, or I need to write I need to do a mind map as they're explaining things to me, and then look at the mind map and then like go off on it. And it's really interesting. But I know some people can just hear something once and then it's in. Yeah, great stuff. Okay, number 4.
Number 4. Oh, so number 4, I think to stay motivated this year, you need resilience. Now, it's one of those words that we hear all the time, and it can kind of become a cliche, but I'm telling you, man, resilience is the key. And what does resilience mean? It's that whole never give up attitude. We have to understand that above all, it's down to you. It's your responsibility not to give up. And what do I mean by resilience? A lot of people give up because they find things difficult. But I want to encourage people and let them know, just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's doable. Yeah, just because it's difficult, it doesn't mean it's not doable, right? So I want you to understand that difficulties will be part of the journey, difficulties will be part of the process, but the key thing is that you remain resilient and you make a conscious decision not to give up. Why is this so important? When you refuse to give up, it becomes extremely hard for you to fail. Most people who don't get the results that they want, or most people who experience some form of failure, is not because of their ability, it's simply because they gave up. So if you can kind of get into the art and the habit of not giving up, you'll find yourself achieving results that you didn't think were possible. You'll find yourself doing things that that you wanted to achieve. So for me, definitely learn the art of resilience. Now, you might be looking at me and thinking, yeah, but how do I be resilient? You make a decision, all right? There is no secret formula. You have to make a decision to be resilient. You have to make a decision to stay motivated. You have to make that decision not to give up. Because I think sometimes when we look at these things and, oh, give me 5 keys and 5 tips, and you want all the answers. No, part of it is you have a responsibility to play in this, you know? So I can tell you, go out there and be great, but I want you to have true understanding that, you know what, if you just decide to not give up, if you make a decision to persevere through every situation, right, it's going to produce so much great results for you. And naturally, do you know what, as we see ourselves achieving these results, because we're refusing to give up, it will naturally fuel our motivation as well. So that's number 4, definitely resilience.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think it's for me, resilience is definitely to do with how you see failure as well, and whether you see, they call it growth mindset versus fixed mindset. In like when I went to teacher training, and that's shown to be a massive predictor. And I think with the resilience thing, if you see everyone's going to fail loads next year. Everyone's going to fail throughout their life. But if you see each of those failures as something that is bad and negative and drags you down, your resilience is going to go down as well. But if you see that failure as something that is something to learn from and something that is part of the process, that's a massive one for my own resilience anyway, is it just keeps you going forward. Great. And last one, number 5.
The last one's like a mixture of things. I would say it's mindset versus purpose, right? And what I mean by that is you just got to have the right mindset. And you know, what do I mean by the right mindset? You've got to learn how to think positively, right? So many people are wired to think negatively. We see the news around us, it's all negative. And you've just got to make that decision to be positive. And you know, I always say to people, positivity doesn't mean that everything around you is going amazingly or great. Positivity just simply means that you refuse to allow the negative things that are happening around you to control you, right? So for me, if you want to be disciplined, if you want to be successful and stay motivated, have a positive mindset. And when I say purpose, it's so important to understand your purpose in life and understand that, number one, you actually have a purpose. Because I find people are not motivated because they don't know their purpose. And if you're watching this right now, I want to encourage you. I think it was Les Brown that has this saying, who simply says, you don't have to be great to get started, but you've got to get started in order to be great. And I think so many young people are worried about, you know, being amazing from day one. And, you know, you don't have to be amazing the first day you revise. You don't have to understand it the first time you attempt to revision. It might take you 10 attempts, but as long as you get there in the end, that's the main thing. So that ties into the resilience again. But for me, the key thing is having a positive mindset and really understanding that you have a purpose. You know, it kind of links to everything that I've said today about, you know, knowing what you want to achieve, having a plan for it, being resilient, you know, knowing your why. All of these things are linked. All these things will help you stay motivated. And above all, like I say to people all the time, man, know who you're doing it for. If it's for you, if it's for your family. For me, one of my biggest motivations is my mum. Another big motivation is I want to have a life where I don't struggle. You know, these things drive me every single day. Sorry. And I think that's the key thing. It's no one knows you better than you know yourself. So, you know, it's knowing what drives you. It's knowing what motivates you. Some people, it's money. But I always say to students, is money a big enough motivation to motivate you when you need to revise? For me, it wasn't. But the thought of my mum struggling was. So, you know, always understand your why and understand what motivates you. And for me, that's the key thing. If you understand why you're doing it and what motivates you, that will give you the motivation to do all the other steps that we spoke about today. So that would be number 5 for me, knowing your purpose and having a positive mindset.
I think that's a fantastic one to end on. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, Mr. Beezy. Is there anything else that any messaging that you think might be useful for student next year? Maybe a bit nervous about restarting school, going to be all a bit crazy and weird. And any advice?
Yeah, the key thing is just don't overthink it. Don't overthink. I think so many people are wondering, oh, are my exams going to be cancelled as well? And stop trying to predict the future. Handle what you can handle. Handle what you can handle. And what you can handle is yourself, your actions, and your thoughts. So if you just focus on handling what you can handle, and everything else will fall into place for you. Just focus on doing your part, and do me a big favor. Don't compare yourself to anybody else, because sometimes so many students get discouraged because they might see someone else who doesn't put in as much effort as them and they're getting better results than them. Just stop focusing on anything else, stop focusing on other people, and literally use this year to focus on yourself and to handle what you can handle, which is your thoughts and your actions. That's my advice.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Mr. Beezy. Hopefully we can have you on again at another time.
Pleasure.
Hopefully in person next time as well.
Yeah, definitely. Look forward to it.